Good morning, beloveds, and happy Wisdom Wednesday. I wanted to come in here today to honor the transition into spring. We just had the spring equinox a few days ago, and I don't know about you, but I'm feeling that shift, even though we have snow here on the ground right now. Not a surprise in Colorado in March. But the spring just always feels like it's ushering in new energy. It's a new beginning. That's what the spring represents. That's why in many cultures, indigenous and otherwise, spring is really the new year, not necessarily January. And I speak on this a lot in my harmonic living work. And and of course the equinox also represents a balance point. And there's always, in my view, there's an in-between period. There's a point where the scales sort of tip. And in this month, we are actually in Aries, so that's a fire energy, but spring as a season, depending on the tradition you work with, the one I work with looks at the spring season as the air element. It's like breathing fresh air into your ideas, into perhaps the visions and goals that you may have set in the beginning of the year. And some of you are acting upon those already. Some of you are still sitting with them. Some of you are still in development, kind of waiting for the ideas to drop in and waiting for inspiration, perhaps. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today is using this time of year, not to use the intellect, because the air relates to the intellect of the mind, to not be very, nose to the grindstone, checking off the to-do list, but more moving from a dream state, which is what the winter sort of represents, into a transitional time of then coming into clarity. Spring is very much about clarity and sort of using the air elements of the wind to clear the air, to clear the dust out, to clear the cobwebs out, and beginning to understand what dream seeds, it's a seed planting time, right? That you really want to put your time, focus, financial resources, and energy into. Some of you right now, I'd love to hear from you. It was asked in another group today, are getting tons and tons of ideas dropping in. So you may have had a vision in January. You may have come up with a word for the year. And I think I'm going to talk about making sure that we continue to work with whatever that word is throughout the year and not forget about it. And also look at it as something that's holistic, but then looking at it as how it takes form in each sort of area in your life. So that may come next week. But I'd love to know, are you in the mode where you've got tons of ideas dropping in and you're not sure whether or not those are ones you want to move forward with? Or are you in a state, perhaps still in somewhat of a dream state where you're not sure? You're not sure what wants to come through next. And I was in that state. And it's surprising to me because usually spring, I'm like, yeah, okay, ready to go. Got all the ideas. I know what I'm doing for the rest of the year. I know what I'm doing into the cycles of next year. And I haven't had a lot of that, or I was expecting to get a lot of inspiration on vacation. And the truth was, I actually was just in space. I was just being, although I had a lot of water energy there to help me along in that process. But that is making the space for things to come through. I also went back and, relooked at some of my words for the year, still working with those. Also, some of the initial wisdom I received from my intuition and from the divine early on, probably in January or maybe even December, was that this may very well be an unplanned plan year. And I have those every once in a while, and it's not always really comfortable for me. And yet, every year I do that, or I claim that perhaps that's what's going to happen, a lot of magic generally occurs. And because I'm opening up to just receive. But it doesn't mean I don't do that without my mind stepping into the battle and saying, you really should know exactly what you're offering and what you're doing and when and all of that. And my Virgo definitely wants that sometimes. And when it doesn't happen, I can get a little out of sorts. So I was feeling a little bit melancholy earlier this week, and I shared that in my private group. And that was really why I was like, my whole assignment on the planet is to inspire and to be inspired. And so for me, when I'm not feeling inspired, it can bring some discomfort. But I was with it and I honored it. It like the air blew through, and um, I read some, sacred passages, watched a few of my teachers on video, was invited to share some wisdom that will be in some events, and the inspiration started coming back in. But I like this time of year as this equilibrium point to look at what's in harmony and what's not, and sort of literally use the air element. Spend a lot of time doing breathing, breath work, pranayama, whatever you want to call it, or whatever practices you like. And just listen, because the air element, it travels on the sound waves, and air, of course, is formless, as is our ideas when they first come to us. They don't have form yet. And very often we immediately want to shift into our linear mind and give ideas some sort of form before we ever really tap into the intuitive mind, to the soul, to the heart, and ask the question, is this something I really, a discernment question? Bring me some clarity, but ask it from your heart and your soul, not your linear mind. Not starting with the to-dos right away. And that can be uncomfortable, because for many of us who kind of operate from a January to December sort of schedule, we're like, "Whoa, it's March already. I haven't done anything." And so I'm going to ask you, first of all, to let go of that 12-month January to December timeframe. There's no reason any of the ideas that you are working with right now have to be complete by December 31st. And some things take longer than that. Some things take less than that. It's really a matter of exchange of energy and how much energy things take, as opposed to how much time. The time factor of the dates will come later. And some things are just, meant to be timed at a certain time of year. It just depends on the type of life and work that you do. So my grandmother, because this week I spoke on a event about wisdom from the grandmothers. My grandmother would, and many of you I know practice this, and your grandmothers did too. She would sweep. She would open the windows, clear out the air, sweep out the old energy, out the door, and call in the new. And that is an air element practice: sweeping energy, opening windows, letting the air just flow through the house. That's air coming in from nature and not recycled heat or air conditioning air. And believe it or not, that is actually a beautiful practice, because things will start to come in. And so you allow the ideas to sort of bubble in your consciousness, travel on the airwaves, if you will, listen for what they're telling you, and then listen to what your own heart and soul is telling you, and then say, okay, I like this one. I can feel it in my body. I really want to bring this one forward. Let's bring in the mind, the intellect, to begin to give it form and put physical energy towards it. And spending time in nature, spending time with the winged creatures, the birds, those they are messengers, and they travel, of course, in and on the air. So I love working and painting bird creatures at this time of year, and plants. It's seed planting. So if you consider metaphorically and symbolically that all of your ideas are little dream seeds, you get to choose which ones go into the soil, which ones you're going to give light to, which ones you're going to nourish into form. Because we can't, for those that do get a lot of ideas coming in, we just don't have the space to perhaps give them all of every idea our energy. And so this is a time in spring to make some choice and begin to discern. And it's okay if you change your mind later. It's okay. In the fall season, we look at, okay, there were some things we did earlier in the spring or perhaps the previous spring, and the time has come to release that thing, or we're harvesting it because we brought it into completion. So these are all ways of working with the cycles of nature and receiving wisdom from that. And for me, just opening up some space, like not beating myself up over the fact that no inspiration or ideas were coming to me for 2 weeks, and being in grace around that and saying, okay, I'm just going to go to my creative practice, take a little nap, give myself some space physically and otherwise. I cleaned up and cleared the physical space that I'm sitting in. And usually when I do that as a ritual practice, the ideas begin to dee, 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 dee. And so now they're coming in and I'm like, oh, great. Fabulous. I've got ideas. I'm reaching out to communicate with those to see. That's the other thing, is to ask for support and say, hey, I have this idea, particularly in our business world. I have this idea, and if you're creating an offering or something like that, reach out for support and say, does this sound like a good idea? Is this something you would enjoy? And so I'm in the process of that, because the air element, again, travel on the sound waves, it's very much about communication and communicating with those that you work with and communicating with your beloveds, and for your personal dreams, perhaps being in communication within your family unit and your relationships, and really speaking what it is you're being called to, because often when you speak it and then hear it, you're more able to feel in your body whether or not something wants to really be brought into form. And so that's another reason I love this time of year. We're at least pre-COVID, and I think for some of us starting to emerge out. People are getting vaccinated, feeling a little safer, and we're ready to emerge, right? And so I, of course, pulled a few cards today. I actually pulled 3 that ended up speaking exactly to this subject. I'm not going to read all of them. Trying to decide which one to read, but this is the one I think that spoke to me and helped me kind of reawaken my inspiration. I think it's okay to be inspired by others. Sometimes we do the dance of, oh, I should have came up with this idea myself. I shouldn't have needed somebody else to assist me in that. At least that's kind of the story I run. And then it's like, oh no, well, that is why I work with these mentors and these wisdom teachers, and I study, because they're here to inspire me, and to illuminate for me things that maybe I can't see, and certainly to call me out when I'm wrapped up in my own BS. So I'll share with you the card I pulled from the Wisdom of the Oracle deck. I pulled the Yin card, which can also be very, very watery, but this applies, I think, a lot to what I'm speaking to. It's the feminine principle of receptivity, letting someone else make the first move. I don't know about you, but for me, that can be very difficult. Gathering information and taking in cues, the art of conscious allowing. So that's also because the mind and the intellect is very present in the air element. We may be getting our ideas and allowing and honoring ourselves the time and space to go gather more information. That's something that I had to learn that was very important to me, whether it's spiritual information or it's actually book wisdom and knowledge, is I can't always rely, I shouldn't anyway, always rely on my mind alone. And I shouldn't pull the trigger necessarily, as soon as the idea drops in and move forward like a freight train, which I have been known to do. Sometimes it's like, no, okay, sounds like a good idea. It's lighting me up, but I need to go gather more information so that I can discern and make choice that will serve me one way or the other, even if in some ways the idea doesn't take form the way I originally envisioned it. So there's a gathering of information process, and sometimes that comes from others. We don't have to do this alone. And so the message here is, this is a time of calculated receptivity as you gracefully await what is coming to you. ready to accept it when it appears. Yin does not involve frozen dreams or even resting, but rather consciously allowing things to flow to you, poised to receive the bounty that will be made available to you. It implies sensitivity as you alertly study the actions of others and contemplate how they will affect you and yours. And I love that. And I will say that it's a beautiful practice to contemplate what others are doing without perhaps going into comparison mode as we tend to do, but rather to be inspired by others. Remember, you must make space for miracles to appear. Be the shaped, not the shaper, and you'll see how quickly your dreams manifest. And I know I've shared on this before. We get so linear in our dreaming and visioning in the wintertime sometimes that we allow, and then we go right into the goal setting and the to-do listing with no space built in, with no allowance for what the universe wants to dream up for us, which is, way more creative than we can ever be when we're stuck up here in the monkey mind. So, throughout the year, as you vision and then you look again at your visions, which, you should be looking at them throughout the cycles of the year, is to ask the question, do I have some space built in here to just receive what I can't possibly perceive just yet? It's there. It's like waiting in the ethers for you. And so I'll speak to, there's different messages in this deck. I'll speak to prosperity. This is a time when the most effective action is to allow others to show you the way forward. And I've been just so inspired by others and people, in communities and where I'm sharing wisdom, and so are they. And we're all, in the soup, inspiring each other. And I love being in community that way. Observe their behavior and follow their lead. Your desire to push through must take a back seat for now. Collaborate and offer your ideas rather than dictating what must happen. Let others come to you. Like, how refreshing can that be sometimes? Is to just open up. And I think, it was Teresa here in my private group who just said today, or not Teresa, I'm sorry, Vicky, that she opened up to receive, and she's had so many people and ideas and everything coming to her. I think she used the term that she has so much yes that she doesn't know what to do with it. Like, that's a fabulous problem to have. Sometimes we shouldn't necessarily go out chasing things. And I mentioned it in a video the other day with my human design being as a manifestor generator. If I'm really paying attention to that wisdom, I really should be responding rather than always going out and seeking or putting ideas out there myself and being the one to take the reins and the lead all the time, which part of my being wants to do that. But to let others come to me, it can be so refreshing. And I did open up to that before I went on vacation, and that's happening. I'm getting, opportunities to be interviewed and interview others because I enjoy doing that too. And just being a part of some real magic with no attachment to what that form then ends up looking like. Doesn't matter. It's just being invited and being asked to do things. And it's lovely. It's important that they feel they have the power now. Another meaning is about releasing your need to have things in the form that you want. How do you want to feel basking in your success? Now, allow the universe to show you the form. Yin is the sign of essence, which often also can be translated as air is an essence or ether is an essence. Things may go more smoothly than you expect. And so, the air and the ideas are really the essence of things that you perhaps want to bring into form. Rarely, occasionally, the magic happens in which an idea drops in and it's like fully informed. It's like the whole form just comes in like a download. Yeah, those are the ones you definitely want to say yes to. But most of the time they come in as little seeds. And then we're nourishing and we're adding and we're gathering more information. And, those do take energy. So I encourage you to really use this time of year to discern where you really want your energy to go, because it may or may not be to all of the idea seeds. And also to open up your visionary space to not just move forward with ideas that are business related, but maybe you're getting ideas around your space, creating your garden, creative processes and practices that ultimately may or may not inform your work. It doesn't matter. Um, Keep top of mind those things that come to you that are just simply for joy and pleasure, because as we move into summer, that's very much what that creative energy can be about. And again, sometimes that ultimately becomes some part of our work, and some things are just for us and our pleasure. And that's if you pulled that all that glitters card, it's about that. Um, and it can be the shadow side of that, of chasing shiny object syndrome. So that all that glitters card is about, yeah, let's seek what brings us joy and pleasure, and not just work, no matter how much we enjoy our work. And then also beware of shiny object syndrome and putting energy into ideas or um, external things that look good and look shiny on the outside, and maybe aren't so much on the inside, or just are not the best use of your time and energy. So I think that's it for today. There's, like I said, there's some events where I was sharing some wisdom around the stories of the women in my lineage that I will share links on later on today or this week. And there will be an opportunity to dive into this spring energy more deeply and go into a creative practice together, where we put some real form around what we will be bringing our ideas and our energy into through the summer and the next several cycles. So have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you next week. Bye.